G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to MagzTV and my coverage of the Halloween events going on. Yes, Halloween is an interesting time for an Australian YouTuber, especially one that deals with games, because, well, quite frankly, we don't really celebrate the holiday. So once per year we get to, well, you guys get to celebrate a holiday of Halloween, and we get to enjoy a whole bunch of horror and spooky themed events for really no applicable reason. It's not entirely true that we don't have a holiday around this time, except we all just tend to get shit-faced for a horse race and call it a day. So anyway, today we are going to be taking a look at War Thunder's events. They have two in the works, and we'll start off with the most un-horror Halloween themed event that I can even think of. This is actually what War Thunder's been doing for it. This year we have two events on. The first is PO2 racing. Now I can sort of partially get the reference they're going for here. The most famous PO2 squadron in existence was the Night Witches, who were a female squadron that bombed out Luftwaffe and just general German positions by flying PO2s under the cover of darkness over the top of the German lines and then shutting off their engines and letting them glide, so they would come through silently, undetected, before dropping their bombs and just flicking the engines back on to take them back home. There's obviously a lot more to the story than just that, and in truth they were absolutely badass. But I'm not sure how this relates to racing. This was the same event that was run last year. The only difference that has popped up in comparison to the last year's event is the PO2 now has a new skin and it's got some glowing jack-o'-lanterns attached to the wings. That's it. And I couldn't work out how it related to racing back then either. If it was some kind of stealth bomber mission where you had to turn off your engines and drop bombs on hostile targets, yeah, I could understand the relevance, but racing isn't really themed to the Night Witches, and it's not really themed to Halloween, unless there's a story that I don't know about a bunch of ghouls, getting out of their crypts and digging themselves out of the ground and going on a freaking marathon. But anyways, this event is actually incredibly easy to win. There is a small element of luck at the start. There is sort of two positions you will get randomly spawned in at the start of a match. A sort of forward leading position and then a secondary position that's further back as a starting position at the start of the match. If you get done in the forward position, chances are you're going to win, or at the very least you're going to be in the top 3 or 4. If you get spawned in the secondary position, short of everybody in the first position crashing or messing up the course, you're not going to win. The PO2 simply won't have enough speed to be able to catch up to them, even if you fly it perfectly, and you're likely going to get caught in the massive mess that tends to occur as everybody inside of the race tries to pile through the first ring. Once you get past that first point and past the first couple of rings, well, as you can see here, you don't actually have to fly through them. You just have to get close enough to them, to actually activate them. And well, it's all about smooth motion. You don't want to make any sharp movements in the PO2. It's not a particularly fast plane. It's not a particularly powerful plane, and even though this event uses the arcade flight model, you still need to keep the aircraft fast. So, gentle movements on the controls, don't turn the plane too hard. If you see a section of the course, and down in the southeast section of the course there is a tight chicane that you've got to go through, climb leading up to the chicane and then dive as you're going through the S-bends and through the turns as you go through. This will allow you to maintain speed better. You will lose a little bit of speed in the climb, but you'll gain it all back in the dive, and you won't lose additional speed as you go through the circuit. Besides that, if you ever get the opportunity in the straights around the track, jump on the tail gunner and put a few rounds into whoever's behind you to convince them to slow down. This is especially important on the first lap, but that's really it. This is, as I said, not a particularly hard event. It's really more of an endurance trial. There's 78 checkpoints around the map, and you're flying at night time, where it's incredibly hard to see exactly where the bends, curves, the outcroppings and the different parts of the map are that could wreck your aircraft. And all you really have to do to win is fly through those 78 checkpoints without crashing, without screwing it up, and without slowing your aircraft down. If you do this, you'll have so much speed that 90% of the players on the map simply won't be able to keep up. In fact, it's already to the point now where about halfway through the second lap here, and I am so far ahead of the rest of my team at this point that there's no way that they will be able to catch me. In fact, I have enough of a lead at this point that I could crash the plane right now, respawn, and I would still stay in first. So anyway, what are the rewards for this particular event? Well, if you manage to get enough rankings out of winning these races, or at least, appearing, you'd really want to appear in the top 3, you get access to a Witch's Cauldron, which can contain either a random decal, or it can contain a random 3D item that you can apply to your tanks. And for those of you out there who do not already have the PO2 unlocked, if you are one of the top 1,000 players in War Thunder in these events, either in the air map, doing the air races, or in the next event involving the tanks, you will receive the PO2 at the completion of the event. So yes, that is exactly what you're playing for here, either 3D items, nose art decals, and the potential chance of getting a PO2 if you don't already have one. Outside of that, is the event actually any fun? In my opinion, not really. Don't get me wrong, I like the races. I've put planes around this track under joystick controls more than once, and it is a fantastically designed track, and I actually really like the idea of racing in War Thunder. I would like to see more maps tuned to it. The problem is the arcade flight model, and more specifically, that you could get past that, but the real problem is the fact that you're racing in the PO2. There's two problems with the PO2 whenever you try and race it. Firstly, it's not really fast enough to catch itself. That is to say, if you have two pilots, one in front of the other, that are flying perfectly, there's no opportunity to close the distance. You will never actually catch one another. So, yeah, this is why I said all you got to do is get out in front and fly a perfect lap, and nobody will actually get you, because the PO2 has no trickery in it that it can use to close the gap. The second part is the PO2 is so slow. It may not look like it here, but because the aircraft is so slow, it's very hard to make a mistake in, and this is where races normally create opportunities for aircraft, or in car racing, cars, to catch one another when one driver or pilot makes a mistake and allows the distance between the two to be closed. But the PO2 is not really fast enough for the person flying it, especially under arcade controls, to make a mistake to begin with. So once the distances are established, it's as simple as that. Between 7 minutes and 7.5 minutes to complete the event, 7:15 is pretty much an average time for me, and that's all there is to it. So next up we have tank racing. Now this is done in a modified version of one of the standard Ground Forces maps, with a bunch of waypoints on the ground, and you're of course racing Hellcats. So what's this got to do with Halloween? Well, the tank's got the word hell in its name. That's about as good as I've got. And the tank has some jack-o'-lanterns on it. So that's about as... yeah, that's as much as this has to do with Halloween. Anyways, much like the PO2 event, this is a checkpoint race. You're racing against a various number of vehicles. This is actually a hell of a lot more fun than the PO2 event, however. I've actually had some pretty good fun driving these tanks around. Mainly because, well, in this place, the arcade physics for arcade tanks actually enhances the gameplay. The tanks are batshit insane. They drift, they slide all over the place, and there are more than enough opportunities for you to mess this up and slam it into a building or flip it over a rock. I've seen people hit buildings hard enough, their tanks have exploded. It's fantastic. There's plenty of places for you to mess it up. But once again, it's all about efficient driving. Trying not to slide too much, keep the tank as fast as you can, and hit the tech points as quickly as you can, and hope that the people behind you really mess it up. You don't have a defensive weapon here, and I really messed this up too much, just too hot into the corner, and as you can see, just slid it up the hill. Thankfully, the people behind me messed it up as well, so I managed to get through, although they did get pretty close here. But anyways, as I was saying, this event, you have no active weapon systems, unlike having the rear turret enabled in the PO2, so you can't shoot any of the other races, you just have to race. The good part is you can safely slam your tank into theirs to push them if necessary, and the arcade physics really works well in this department. Once you've got a lead, just try not to slide, keep the tank fast, and don't mess up the checkpoints or turns. It doesn't really matter if you follow the road or not, just watch out for the rocks hidden in the snow, they can bounce you pretty hard. And again, this is not a particularly complicated event, it's actually an incredibly easy one. Once again, the rewards you're playing for here are exactly the same. You're racing for rankings, get enough rankings, you get a random trophy out of the Witch's Cauldron, and the prizes are 3D models such as witches' hats or jack-o'-lanterns for your tank, or potential decals, rare decals that you won't get access to in any other way. And much like the PO2 event, if you're in the top 1,000 tank races, you will get a PO2 if you don't already have one. yes, the tank unlocks the aircraft as well. There is no tank to unlock in this event. That's just what's available. Honestly, in my personal opinion, the tank races are actually the way to go to try and get the unlocks for this event. If you really want the jack-o'-lanterns and the witches' hats and all the decals, this is the way to actually do it. The rewards are the same as the aircraft, but here you have one lap with 32 checkpoints, and the entire event can be completed in about 2.5 to 3 minutes, depending on how fast you race, which is half the time of the aircraft event. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, click like if you do, subscribe if you want to see more. Fly smart, fly safe. I'll catch you in the skies.